Welcome to Fringe Pop 321, the show that believes the world is stranger than we think, but thinking should not be strange. We are back with Dr. Judd Burton talking about werewolves, and the initial discussion, you sort of left us with the berserkers, which I had never heard of them before. And so you have a bunch of militaristic guys dressed up in animal skins, bear skins and whatnot, taking hallucinogenic drugs. And acting accordingly, I guess we could say. But I'll tell you what that made me think of was the connection between a couple of biblical things, actually. And so we want to sort of go into that turf. In the Old Testament, evil and evil entities are often associated with different creatures, different animals. The jackal is one. But you also get birds, ostriches, owls, things like this. And they tend to be either carrion eaters or nocturnal animals or animals that just look weird, okay? They just look creepy. They're sort of outliers, with the rest of the normal, fauna of the area. And so, they were often used to speak of the otherness, okay, of the underworld and death and chaos. Again, this is a fairly common thing. So that made me, that's one sort of trajectory. And then you have this very explicit connection in the New Testament of drugs, okay, specifically hallucinogens. The Greek term pharmacopoeia is sort of the umbrella term that is associated with demonism, with contact with entities. So as I'm sitting there listening to you about, again, this set of ideas that contribute to this thing that becomes, werewolf lore. That's what's going off in my head. So do you see, like with vampires, do you see a connection to the Judeo-Christian world in regard to this topic as well?
Yes, I think because we're still dealing with the demonic, as in the case with the vampire. You're still looking at a spirit that's adapting to a set of in some cases may have created, but is certainly in other instances adapting to cultural elements. The same issue with vampire. You can't, we might know historically how these ideas come together and produce this legend, but as you said with that one, you can't sort of reduce all of the experiences, all of the reports to that. That's not the only cause to this effect. Right.
And so this is what I hear you saying again with this, that it's not just a psychosis known as lycanthropy, even though that's obviously plays a significant role. There's something else going on here.
Yeah, there certainly, there are going to be, statistically, you're just going to have these clinical occurrences of those kinds of psychoses. But then how does one delineate that from what would be, a demonic? They may be overlapping. One may feed into the other. The other element here at play is you beginning with the berserkers. The ingestion of these kinds of hallucinogenic materials and their associations with totemic rituals is certainly not confined to that part of the world. Farther into Western Europe, there were things like, that witches used, like salves that were made out of belladonna and things like that were supposed to give them flight. Clearly, ingesting, these sorts of things are going to cause those sorts of hallucinogens. The ingestion of things like yahe and ayahuasca in the Americas, dacha and peyote. All these sorts of things were used in conjunction with ritual, and very often in some sort of totemic setting, and not infrequently in conjunction with culturally specific witchcraft. So all of this, it's jumbled up together. What's interesting about the ingestion of hallucinogens in conjunction with this is that persons who are doing this now, whether it's DMT or ayahuasca or what have you, people are reporting seeing these entities.
Mm-hmm.
And the reports often line up in terms of their description. People are seeing...
there's going to be similarity.
There are similarities, yeah. There are people that are seeing the classic one, which is a kind of clown, almost like you see in the Kachina rituals in the Southwest. Others include more reptilian, dare I say, dragon-like or demonic.
Mm-hmm. Do you get beastly things as well? Like,
yes, that's
like
why I say there's a variety of these kinds of entities.
Because I know you get alien imagery too.
Sure, sure.
So it's just kind of, they all go to the same well, or from the same well.
They do, and then and the flip side of that coin is not just the encounter, but the actual indwelling by some sort of, let's just say, werewolf spirit or totemic spirit. Looking at this through the biblical lens, that of course is a demonic spirit. So you enter into the same kinds of territory, the same kinds of capabilities we find in the demonic vampire spirit.
Do you think, this just made me think of, it's not always, but there are a handful of descriptions of demoniacs, people who are possessed in the Gospels, and they do, again, exhibit, again, people are going to define it differently, but I think you could certainly read through some of the demoniac episodes and think that individual's behaving like an animal, or it has, superhuman strength or something like that a person wouldn't normally have. Do you think that's part of this picture as well?
I think so. Because again, it harkens back to characteristics or abilities. If we're going to tie these spirits in with the pre-flood world, it harkens back to the characteristics that they exhibited while they were still alive. Drinking of blood, consuming of human flesh, general, ravenous evil and wickedness. All of these were attributes that you find in instances of werewolfism.
And it doesn't have to be the giantism, because you have other terminology that brings other things to mind. There a lot of the scholarly literature on Nephilim or Gibborim really focuses on the sort of warrior class. Okay, so if you're one of these sort of demigod or semi-divine sort of warriors in the ancient world, you're better at what you do than anybody else. You're stronger, you're faster. Your use of weapons is better, is superior. So again, you have some of these elements. Again, I could see. Other than just appearance, it's more of a behavior.
Very much so.
And I could see where, again, Hollywood, when we think of werewolves, we think of the appearance, we think of the transformation. And again, that's probably, like we were talking a little bit last time, maybe some literary license or artistry or whatever. But if you're thinking that this person is becoming or behaving or becoming like an animal, then if you wanted to sort of visually convey that, well, then you would do, again, some of these things. You would make them look, animalistic. You would change their appearance. But you do have, again, a shape-shifting element, like you pointed out last time with certainly the Book of Enoch, chapter 19, it includes that idea. So it sounds odd initially to connect this to demoniacs in the Gospels and Enochian material, but when you just look at the individual data points, they can sort of contribute to the same profile. Again, this is what I'm hearing from you.
There's a pattern that emerges. Yeah, there's a recognizable connection. If you honestly study the material, the anthropological material, and the scant historical accounts that we have, and do that in conjunction with the biblical worldview, taking the biblical worldview into account, then you examine these data points, and there's a connective tissue between all of them. And it shouldn't surprise us a great deal, because these entities have had millennia to study, in addition to having the whatever knowledge that they gained from their watcher forebears. That's why you end up seeing things like the Verkolikos Greek folklore,
Okay.
where it can either be a vampire or a werewolf.
Oh, so that term can be used to describe something that we would identify as a vampire in one passage, or that we would identify as some sort of were creature in
Sure.
another passage.
Yes.
Same terminology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting. That it could sort of go either way.
Mm-hmm.
Are you thinking of any particular passages, or it's just an
I'm not thinking of
observation?
any particular passages. That word, although I know that it does show up
It's
in
got the
antiquity,
semantic range.
but it's got the semantic range. It's got, if you're thinking just in terms of historical linguistics, it's got a lot of breadth to it.
Mm-hmm. Are there any significant studies on this? When we talked about vampires last time, or several episodes ago, there were some major studies. Do we have any of that for here? I mean, what would you recommend if people are interested in this?
The first book that I would recommend is a work by a clergyman and ethnologist by the name of Sabine Baringgold, and it's simply the Book of the Werewolves. In my mind, it stands the test of time in much the same way that Summers' The Vampire's Kith and Kin does. It's still the best book on the subject.
Mm-hmm.
People probably know this name, or may know this name, because he was the author of the hymn Onward Christian Soldiers.
Wow.
And he also wrote the definitive work on the folklore and history of werewolves. The other book, I know
That's just crazy.
it belongs on this show, right?
Each of those things don't belong together.
I know. The other one is also by Montague Summers, and it's simply called The Werewolf, and it displays the same care of scholarship that The Vampire, His Kith and Kin does. So I would recommend those two books in particular.
Do either specifically track on the unclean spirit idea? I mean, I know the vampire one does, but do you see the other title doing that with the werewolf?
Summers more so than Baringgold,
Okay.
I think.
Because I mean, unclean spirit. Again, I'm hearkening back to the recent research
Mm-hmm.
that I did for the Demons book,
Mm-hmm.
and again the study. It was actually a fairly recent dissertation that winds up getting published in a journal article,
Mm-hmm.
and in book form as well. Unclean spirit really doesn't refer to something dirty, either like physically dirty or like morally or sexually dirty. It really refers to a disallowed or abhorrent mixture.
Mm-hmm.
That these two things are to be kept separate. And of
Mhm.
course, we have human life, animal life.
Mhm.
And then in the context of Enoch in
Mhm.
Genesis 6, it's that whole sons of God, daughters of men situation. This is an unnatural mixture.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see, conceptually, why you could connect. And this is what I'm wondering, because I haven't read Summers' book, but it's very interesting that if you're looking at unclean spirit that way, as an abhorrent, chaotic mixture, two things that are coming together that God said don't belong together,
Mm-hmm.
then I could see them making that connection, that conceptual connection.
Certainly.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Anything else that you've written on this particular topic?
Well, again, I'm working on a book right now called The Van Helsing Way, and I do have a chapter that's devoted to were creatures, looking at those through the biblical lens.
Right.
Mhm.
And when do you expect that would be available?
I'm hoping to have it available in the spring.
Okay.
It's been one of those half-finished books for a while.
So at the time of this conversation, several months, maybe 5-6 months or something like that.
Maybe, yeah.
That would be your
Yeah.
optimistic.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not too far off. That would be good. It'd be a good resource.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, thanks for visiting with us again and going over again an unusual topic, something that I just have no feel for. So I'm glad that you could be with us and sort of get us started, get our audience started on this topic. So thanks again.
My pleasure.
Yeah. And thank you for watching Fringe Pop 321. Please visit our website, fringepop321.com. Each of our episodes has a companion web page that you can get more information and sources, primary and good secondary sources. We try to emphasize on this show the importance of peer review and good scholarship. So please visit our website for more information. And if you're interested in supporting what we do here, go to fp321.com/S. That's the letter S. And come back and watch more episodes, because what you know may not be so.